The transport ship Keela. Dawn shuddered as it dropped out of hyperspace above the contested world of Theros Prime, inside the military bay. 300 elite soldiers from across the Galactic Defense Coalition checked their equipment one final time. Among the towering Krillian shock troopers, the swift Zolani commandos, and the tech-savvy Marundi specialists sat one human. Sergeant Elena Vasquez didn't look like much compared to her alien counterparts. At 5 feet 6 inches tall, she seemed almost childlike next to the 8-foot Krillians with their chitinous armor and natural weapon appendages. The Zolani moved with predatory grace that made her careful, measured movements appear clumsy. The Marundi could interface directly with weapon systems through neural implants. While she relied on what they considered primitive, optical scopes, Elena had heard the whispers during the 3-month journey to Theros Prime. The other species spoke in their native tongues, but she'd learned enough to catch the gist. Pet human, token primitive, commands diversity experiment. They weren't trying to hide their opinions. The worst part was that she understood their perspective. Humanity had only joined the coalition 15 years ago, when first contact revealed that humans were considered a developing species by galactic standards. Other races had millennia of military evolution, technological advancement, and combat experience across hundreds of worlds. Humans had barely figured out their own planet, but Elena had something none of them knew about yet. Colonel HFY, the Krillian mission commander, stood at the front of the bay. His mandibles clicked as he addressed the assembled troops. Primary objective remains unchanged. The hegemony has established a forward command center in the mountain complex designated Target Alpha Intelligence. Indicates they're using it to coordinate attacks across 3 sectors. Elena listened while checking her rifle for the 100th time. The weapon looked ancient compared to the plasma rifles and energy cannons her squad mates carried. It was a modified version of a human design called the Chetak M200, chambered for the newest generation of smart rounds that could adjust trajectory mid-flight. Most aliens saw it as a quaint throwback to projectile weapons that civilized species had abandoned centuries ago. The facility is heavily fortified, the HFY continued. Expect heavy resistance from hegemony forces. Teams Alpha through Delta will assault the main entrance. Teams Echo and Foxtrot will provide flanking support. His compound eyes fixed on Elena's section. Team Golf will establish overwatch positions and provide long-range fire support. Sergeant Major Krenal, a Zolani who commanded Team Golf, rose gracefully to her full 7-foot height. Her skin shifted through a pattern of colors that Elena had learned indicated skepticism. Colonel, with respect, the human's weapon system is ... dominated. Perhaps she would be better suited to communications or medical support? Several soldiers made sounds that Elena recognized as alien laughter. A Marundi corporal named Tech Specialist Rex spoke up, his translation device rendering his thoughts in clipped standard. Projectile weapons lack the range and precision required for effective overwatch. My plasma rifle can engage targets at 4 kilometers with pinpoint accuracy. Her primitive chemical propellant system is effective at maybe 1 kilometer, assuming perfect conditions. Elena felt heat rise in her cheeks but kept her expression neutral. She'd faced this kind of dismissal throughout her military career, first in human special forces and now here among the stars. The assumption was always the same: if you weren't the biggest, fastest, or most technologically advanced, you weren't capable of excellence. Colonel HFY's mandibles clicked in what Elena had learned was the Krillian equivalent of a shrug. Sergeant Vasquez will accompany Team Golf as assigned. If her equipment proves inadequate, she can provide spotting assistance for more capable shooters. The transport ship began its final approach to the drop zone. Elena strapped her rifle across her back and checked the rest of her gear one more time. She carried more ammunition than any of her teammates, since her weapon couldn't be recharged like their energy weapons. Her pack also contained a spotting scope, range-finding equipment, and a small notebook where she recorded wind patterns, humidity, and other factors that affected ballistic calculations. To the aliens, it all looked hopelessly primitive. Krenal approached as they prepared for insertion. Her skin displayed what Elena had learned were conciliatory patterns. Human Elena, I mean no personal disrespect. But this mission is too important for ... experimentation. Elena looked up at the tall Zelani. I understand, Sergeant Major. Just give me a chance to prove myself. The drop pods launched 20 minutes later. Elena's stomach lurched as artificial gravity gave way to free fall, then lurched again as atmospheric thrusters kicked in for final approach. Through the small viewport she could see Theros primes. Surface rushing up to meet them, landscape of jagged mountains and deep valleys. That would provide excellent concealment for snipers. Team Golf's pod. Touchdown in a forested area 3 kilometers from target. Alpha, Elena was the first one out, immediately moving to establish a perimeter while the aliens took their time orienting themselves. She'd learned that most coalition species valued careful planning over quick action, but her human military training emphasized speed and adaptability. The team moved through the forest for 2 hours before reaching their assigned overwatch position on a ridge overlooking the hegemony facility. Elena immediately began studying the target through her spotting scope while the others set up their more sophisticated equipment. The facility was impressive. Built into the side of a mountain, it showed clear signs of recent hegemony construction. The main entrance was a reinforced blast door guarded by automated turrets and energy shields. Secondary positions dotted the mountainside, each one offering overlapping fields of fire that would make any assault extremely costly. Target analysis complete, Rex announced, his neural interface allowing him to process tactical data at superhuman speed. Primary defensive positions identified? My plasma rifle can engage targets at positions Alpha 7 through Alpha 12 with 97% hit probability. Kreenal's skin displayed tactical patterns as she coordinated with the assault teams. Confirmed. Zelani combat doctrine indicates optimal firing positions for maximum psychological impact on enemy forces. Elena continued her own analysis, but she was looking for different things. Wind patterns around the mountain peaks. Thermal currents that would affect bullet trajectory. The exact positioning of enemy soldiers and the tiny gaps in their cover that energy weapons might not be able to exploit. Contact. In 30 minutes, came the word from Colonel Vex-VO. The assault began exactly on schedule. Teams Alpha through Delta advanced on the main entrance while Echo and Foxtrot moved to flanking positions. From her perch 3 kilometers away, Elena watched through her scope as plasma bolts and energy beams lit up the mountainside. The hegemony forces responded with devastating firepower. Their weapons were more advanced than anything the Coalition carried, and their defensive positions had been chosen expertly. Within minutes, it became clear that the assault was stalling. Team Golf, we need fire support. Vexvar's voice crackled over the radio. Enemy position Alpha 9 is pinning down our advance. Rex immediately engaged with his plasma rifle. Elena watched through her scope as his shots impacted near the target position but failed to penetrate the enemy's energy shields. The Marundi's weapon was incredibly accurate, but the hegemony had technology designed to counter standard Coalition tactics. Ineffective, Rex reported. Enemy shields are absorbing plasma discharge. Kreenal tried next with her particle beam rifle. Her shots were even more precise than Rex's, but they suffered the same problem. The hegemony shields seemed specifically designed to counter energy weapons. Team Golf, what's your status? Vex-VOR's voice carried a note of desperation. We're taking heavy casualties down here. Elena studied the enemy position through her scope. She could see movement behind the shields, hegemony soldiers moving between cover positions. But more importantly, she could see something her teammates had missed. The shield generators themselves were physical devices, and they had tiny vulnerabilities that only a projectile weapon might be able to exploit. Sergeant Major, Elena said quietly, request permission to engage. Kreenal's skin flashed patterns of disbelief. Your weapon cannot penetrate those shields any better than ours. No, ma'am, Elena agreed. But maybe I don't need to. She had identified a hegemony shield generator positioned behind a rock formation at exactly 2,847 meters from her position. The wind was gusting from the northwest at 12 kilometers per hour, with thermals rising from the valley floor that would affect bullet trajectory. Most importantly, there was a gap in the rock formation exactly 7 centimeters wide that provided a clear line of sight to the generator's primary power coupling. It was an impossible shot. By any reasonable standard, the target was smaller than a dinner plate at nearly 3 kilometers range, partially concealed, and could only be hit through a gap that left no margin for error. Elena would have to account for wind, gravity drop, the Coriolis effect of the planet's rotation, and thermal currents that would push her bullet off course, but Elena had made impossible shots before. With their primary defensive grid disabled, the hegemony forces inside the mountain facility shifted to desperate tactics. Elena watched through her scope as enemy soldiers abandoned their fixed positions and began moving through the complex in organized retreats, trying to establish new defensive lines deeper inside the facility, but Elena could see something that the advancing coalition forces couldn't. The hegemony wasn't just retreating, they were preparing to activate something big. Through gaps in the mountain structure, she caught glimpses of enemy personnel working frantically around what looked like a massive cylindrical device. Her experience with human military engineering told her it was probably a self-destruct mechanism, designed to deny the facility to coalition forces even if they couldn't hold it. Colonel HFY War. This is Overwatch, Elena spoke into her radio. I'm seeing increased activity around what appears to be a large explosive device, approximately 400 meters inside the main complex. They may be preparing to destroy the facility. There was a pause before HFY War responded. His voice carried the strain of leading an assault against a technologically superior enemy. Can you confirm, Overwatch? Our sensor readings are unclear due to mountain interference. Elena adjusted her scope's magnification and studied the device more carefully. The hegemony soldiers were connecting power cables and activating control panels with the urgency of people working against a countdown. She could see status lights beginning to illuminate in sequence along the device's surface. Confirmed, Colonel. Whatever they're activating, they're running out of time to do it. Best estimate is they have less than 10 minutes before activation. Kreenal and Rex had been monitoring Elena's radio communications, and both aliens immediately began their own sensor sweeps of the facility interior. Rex's neural interface processed the data faster than biological reflexes could manage, while Kreenal used Zelani-enhanced senses to detect energy patterns that most species couldn't perceive. Human Elena is correct, Rex confirmed grimly. My readings indicate a massive energy buildup consistent with a fusion self-destruct device. Estimated yield would destroy everything within a 5-kilometer radius, including our assault teams, Kreenal added. Her skin shifting to warning colors, Elena continued studying the enemy positions through her scope. The self-destruct device was deep inside the mountain, protected by multiple layers of rock and metal. Even if the coalition forces could fight their way to it in time, disarming an alien technology under combat conditions would be nearly impossible, but Elena could see the hegemony soldiers who were operating it. They were working at a control station positioned near what appeared to be the facility's main power distribution center. The station was accessible only through a narrow corridor that provided excellent protection from assault. But it had one critical vulnerability, a single window that faced toward the mountain's exterior wall. The window was made of reinforced, transparent aluminum designed to withstand direct energy weapon impacts. But Elena wasn't carrying an energy weapon. Colonel, I may have a solution, Elena radioed. The enemy control station has a direct line of sight to my position. If I can eliminate the operators, it might buy you time to reach the device. Negative, Overwatch, the HFY War replied immediately. That target is over 3 kilometers inside the mountain. No weapon system can achieve that kind of penetration through solid rock. Elena studied the trajectory carefully. The window was 3,247 meters from her position, but the shot wouldn't be going through solid rock. The facility had been built to take advantage of natural caves and passages in the mountain, creating a complex path of corridors and chambers that a carefully aimed projectile might be able to navigate. It was like shooting through a maze while blindfolded. Request permission to attempt the shot. Colonel, Sergeant Vasquez, Vexvillar's voice carried a note of frustrated respect. Even if you could somehow calculate a trajectory through multiple chambers and corridors, you'd need to know the exact layout of the facility interior. Elena was quiet for a moment, studying the architectural plans she'd memorized during the mission briefing. Most soldiers focused on entry points and defensive positions, but Elena had studied the entire facility blueprint with the methodical attention to detail that made humans effective snipers. I have the layout memorized, sir. And I think I can trace a path. Rex's neural interface was running ballistic calculations in real time, factoring in every variable he could measure. This is impossible, he stated flatly. The projectile would need to ricochet off multiple surfaces at precisely calculated angles, maintain sufficient velocity through atmospheric friction, and arrive at the target with enough energy to penetrate reinforced transparent aluminum. The margin for error is 0. Understood, Elena replied. She was already identifying the ricochet points in her mind, tracing the path a bullet would need to follow to reach the target. First, it would enter through a ventilation grate at the facility's upper level, then bounce off a support beam in the main corridor at exactly 17 degrees to enter the secondary passage. Another calculated ricochet off a metal door frame would direct it into the final corridor, where it would pass through the control room window and strike the primary. Operator, Krenow was watching Elena with fascination. Your species calculates these trajectories using biological brain functions? Without neural enhancement? We've been doing it for thousands of years, Elena replied absently, still working out the mathematics in her head. Humans got good at hitting targets at distance because our planet had a lot of dangerous things we needed to kill before they killed us. She made final adjustments to her scope and settled into the perfect firing position. The shot would require absolute precision. Any deviation of more than 2 centimeters at any point along the trajectory would send the bullet harmlessly into solid rock. But Elena had spent years training for exactly this kind of impossible shot. Through her scope, she could see the hegemony operators working frantically at their controls. Status lights were illuminating faster now, and she estimated less than 5 minutes before the self-destruct sequence became irreversible. Colonel? I'm taking the shot. Elena controlled her breathing, feeling her heartbeat slow to the steady rhythm that allowed for perfect precision. She waited for the exact moment when wind conditions, her natural biorhythms, and the target alignment all came together in perfect harmony. She fired. The bullet left her rifle traveling at 884 meters per second. Elena tracked its path through her scope, watching as it followed the exact trajectory she'd calculated. Through the ventilation grate at precisely the right angle. Ricochet off the support beam at 17 degrees. Bounce off the doorframe to redirect into the final corridor. 3.5 seconds after leaving the rifle, the bullet struck the reinforced window at exactly the right point to penetrate the transparent aluminum and continue into the control room. Elena saw the primary operator suddenly stagger and fall, while his companions spun around in confusion. The status lights on the self-destruct device stopped their sequential illumination. Direct hit, Elena reported calmly. Self-destruct sequence appears to have been interrupted. The radio exploded with voices as coalition teams confirmed the shutdown of the enemy device. Vexvillar's mandibles clicked with what Elena now recognized as amazement. Overwatch, that was ... extraordinary. How did you calculate that trajectory? Elena was already scanning for new targets. The remaining hegemony forces were in disarray with their facility compromised and their self-destruct option eliminated, but they were still dangerous. Just physics and practice, sir. Humans have been calculating ricochet shots since we started throwing rocks at predators. Rex's neural interface was displaying the complete ballistic analysis of Elena's shot. The mathematical complexity was staggering, dozens of variables calculated simultaneously to achieve a result that shouldn't have been possible for biological intelligence. This level of spatial reasoning and ballistic calculation, it would require a Class 7 AI to duplicate? Negative, Elena replied while acquiring her next target. It just requires a human who's really good at geometry. The final phase of the assault proceeded with Elena providing overwatch support for the advancing teens. Without their defensive shields or self-destruct option, the hegemony forces were quickly overwhelmed by superior coalition numbers. But it was Elena's precise marksmanship that made the difference. Every shot she took eliminated a key enemy position or critical target that energy weapons couldn't effectively engage. When hegemony soldiers tried to establish choke points in narrow corridors, Elena's bullets found gaps in their cover that plasma rifles couldn't exploit. When enemy commanders attempted to coordinate defensive actions from protected positions, Elena's projectiles reached them through windows, ventilation shafts, and structural openings that energy weapons couldn't penetrate. By the time coalition forces secured the facility 2 hours later, Elena had fired 47 rounds and scored 46 hits. The only miss had been a deliberate ranging shot to confirm wind conditions. Colonel HFY arrived at Team Golf's position as the sun was setting over Theros Prime. The Krillian commander approached Elena with what she was learning to recognize as profound respect. 6 months after the Theros Prime mission, Elena found herself standing in the Coalition War College's main auditorium, facing an audience of 3,000 military officers from across the galaxy. The building itself was impressive, a crystalline structure on the moon. Kepler 7 that housed the most advanced military academy in known space. She'd been promoted to staff sergeant and assigned to the newly created Human Integration Command. But that wasn't why she was here today. She was here because her impossible shot through the hegemony facility had fundamentally changed how the Coalition thought about warfare. General Vex Prime, the Krillian commandant of the War College, introduced her with mandibles clicking and ceremonial patterns. Today we examine a tactical innovation that has revolutionized Coalition doctrine. The human technique of precision ballistic calculation has proven effective against enemy technologies that our conventional weapons cannot counter. Elena stepped to the podium, looking out at an audience that included some of the most brilliant military minds in the galaxy. Krillian shock trooper commanders, Zelani special operations leaders, Marundi technical specialists, and representatives from dozens of other species, all waiting to understand how a primitive human had succeeded where their advanced technology had failed. 6 months ago, Elena began, most of you thought projectile weapons were obsolete. You had good reasons for that belief. Energy weapons are more powerful, more accurate at extreme range, and don't require physical ammunition. But they all share one critical weakness. They can be stopped by energy shields. She activated the holographic display, showing a detailed recreation of the Theros Prime facility. The hegemony designed their defenses specifically to counter Coalition energy weapons. Their shields absorbed plasma, deflected particle beams, and dispersed laser fire. They never considered that someone might be using chemical propellant projectiles. A Marundi general raised one of his mechanical appendages. Staff Sergeant, our analysis indicates that your shot required calculations beyond the capacity of biological intelligence. How did you process so many variables simultaneously? Elena had been expecting this question. It was the one every alien officer asked when they tried to understand human marksmanship. I didn't process them simultaneously. I processed them sequentially, using pattern recognition developed over years of practice. Human brains are exceptional at recognizing complex patterns and making intuitive leaps based on incomplete information. She changed the display to show ballistic trajectories from her perspective. When I looked at that facility, I didn't see mathematical equations. I saw a puzzle that needed to be solved. Every surface that could create a ricochet, every air current that would affect trajectory, every structural element that might interfere with the shot, my brain processed it all as one connected pattern. But the precision required, interrupted a Zelani colonel, her skin displaying skeptical patterns, exceeds what we believed biological intelligence could achieve. That's because you never had to achieve it to survive, Elena replied. Every species in the coalition evolved beyond the need for individual precision marksmanship. You developed technology that made personal skill less important. Humans didn't have that option. She showed images of Earth, humans hunting with primitive weapons, fighting in environments where technology failed, adapting to challenges that required individual excellence rather than technological solutions. On Earth, if you missed your shot at a predator, you died. If you couldn't hit a target at distance, your family starved. We spent thousands of years in situations where perfect marksmanship was the difference between life and death. That creates evolutionary pressure for spatial reasoning, ballistic calculation, and hand-eye coordination that other species never experienced. General Vex Prime clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. This suggests that human military capabilities have been significantly underestimated in our tactical planning. Yes, sir, they have, Elena agreed. But it goes beyond marksmanship. Humans excel at improvisation, adaptation, and solving problems with limited resources. We're good at making impossible things work because that's what we've always had to do. She advanced to the next display, showing recruitment and training data from the past 6 months. Since Theros Prime, human enlistment in Coalition Special Forces has increased by 400%. More importantly, missions with human participation have a 30% higher success rate than those without. A Krillian commander leaned forward, his natural armor plates shifting as he spoke. Our tactical doctrine has traditionally emphasized technological superiority and overwhelming force. Are you suggesting we need to reconsider fundamental strategic principles? I'm suggesting that different challenges require different solutions, Elena replied. The hegemony has been studying coalition tactics for decades. They know how to counter our energy weapons, how to defend against our assault patterns, how to neutralize our technological advantages. But they've never faced opponents who can succeed despite technological limitations. She showed footage from recent missions where human soldiers had achieved objectives that conventional coalition forces couldn't accomplish. Humans infiltrating facilities by climbing surfaces that other species couldn't scale. Human engineers jury-rigging solutions from salvaged parts when high-tech equipment failed. Human medics treating injuries using improvised techniques when advanced medical technology was unavailable. Each species brings unique advantages to the coalition, Elena continued. Krillian strength and durability allow them to survive conditions that would kill other soldiers. Zelani speed and senses make them exceptional scouts and infiltrators. Marundi technological integration gives them capabilities that biological species can't match. But humans bring adaptability. She paused, looking out at the assembled officers. We bring the ability to succeed when everything goes wrong. The questions that followed revealed how profoundly the Theros Prime mission had changed coalition thinking. Officers wanted to know about human training methods, whether other species could learn human techniques, and how to integrate human capabilities into existing tactical doctrine. Elena answered each question with the patient precision she'd learned from years of teaching. Marksmanship. She explained how human training emphasized repetition until complex skills became instinctive. How humans practiced in conditions deliberately designed to be more difficult than actual combat. How human military doctrine assumed that equipment would fail, communications would break down, and situations would develop in ways nobody had planned for. The most important thing to understand about human military thinking, Elena concluded, is that we plan for failure. Every human soldier is trained to accomplish the mission even if everything goes wrong. Everyone else is dead and all the technology stops working. After the formal presentation, Elena was approached by individual officers from across the coalition military hierarchy. A Krillian general wanted to establish exchange programs where human soldiers would train with shock trooper units. A Zelani admiral asked about incorporating human marksmanship training into commando academies. Marundi technical specialists inquired about studying human problem-solving methodologies. but the most significant conversation came from Colonel HFY War, her former mission commander, who had traveled from the front lines specifically to attend her presentation. "Staff Sergeant," he said, mandibles clicking with formal respect. "The intelligence gathered from the Theros Prime facility has led to successful operations across 17 sectors. The tactical innovations developed from studying your methods have been implemented in over 200 missions." Elena nodded acknowledgement but said nothing. She'd learned that sometimes the most important contributions were measured not in personal recognition but in lives saved and objectives achieved. "More importantly," HFY continued, "your actions have changed how the Coalition views humanity's role in galactic defense. The High Command has authorized the creation of specialized human units, integrated training programs, and research into combining human adaptability with alien technological advantages." He paused, studying Elena with the compound eyes that could process more visual information than human brains could imagine. "But I believe the most significant change has been in how we define military excellence. Before Theros Prime, we assumed that technological superiority was the only path to tactical success. You demonstrated that individual skill, properly applied, can achieve what advanced technology cannot." Elena considered this carefully. Throughout her military career, she'd seen how assumptions about capability could blind people to actual capability. Humans had been dismissed as primitive because their technology lagged behind alien standards. But technology was just a tool. It was the intelligence and skill behind it that determined effectiveness. "Sir, every species in the Coalition has capabilities that others don't fully understand or appreciate. The key is learning to combine those capabilities instead of competing with them." 6 months later, Elena found herself training the first class of the Coalition's integrated marksmanship program. Her students included Krillian heavy weapons specialists learning precision techniques, Zilani scouts studying advanced ballistic calculation, and Marundi technicians disco